Hi, it's Dave Michaels, and welcome to the first episode of Leapfrog CX Strategies. I'm very excited to introduce my first guest, Vasili Triant of UJET, the CEO of UJET. I've known Vasili for, I don't know, it's easier to count employers than it is years. I remember him back from Shoretel days, but Serenova, Cisco, and he's been at UJET for 5 years. And we're going to cover a lot of ground in this interview at UJET and talk about the industry as a whole. So many things to talk about. So with that, let's get to our first episode of Leapfrog CX Strategies.
Don't you sit by your phone, don't you wait up all alone. If your phone don't ring, well, you know it's been out. If your phone don't ring, if your phone don't ring.
Vasili, welcome. You're my first guest on Leapfrog CX Strategies. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I feel honored to be your first guest. I'm looking forward to it, Dave.
We got so much to cover here. So I got all my questions kind of organized. Going to start kind of high and get down into the details here. Just a brief introduction. You joined UJET in 2020 as a business officer and took almost 5 years, I guess 5 years to get finally promoted to CEO. What took you so long? We won't make that the first question, but congratulations on being CEO. What was it? What, April? You got, was it April?
Yeah, April this year. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So you've been at UJET through, I guess, 2 fundraisings, and you really through almost everything. I mean, you've been there for quite some time. I remember meeting you for sure. I definitely remember meeting you at Cisco and Rowan Cisco. I definitely remember you at Serenova. I don't know if we crossed paths at Shoretel or not, but Shoretel was a fun company.
Shoretel was great. Definitely a great experience.
And you were at Shoretel a long time too.
Yeah, a little over 8 years. Yeah, I went through the whole CEO debacle, and yes, that was that kind of precipitated my departure. So,
were you there at the final CEO?
We went from Combs to Don Gerskis as interim, then to Peter. I can't even remember Peter's last name. That was kind of like
he was the one that killed the company. Yeah,
he was the one that killed the company. Yeah, and that precipitated my departure when he said, "What is cloud contact center?" And I said, "Okay, time for me to go." So,
well, you kind of had a similar setup there with Rowan. I mean, you were there during the Rowan Spark time, and you were the guy in charge of contact center. And I think Rowan kind of had a similar attitude toward contact center as Peter did.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people say that, but when I joined, Rowan and I spent a bunch of time together, and he kind of was asking me like a lot of questions and basically said, hey, we're going to, put all the tools to work, and let's go invest in this CCaaS space. And then, fast forward a few months later, he becomes the CEO of Five9. So he took a quick interest there and left. Yeah.
Now, of all those companies, Cisco, Serenova, Shoretel, we won't count TalkTest. You weren't there very long. Which was the funnest?
Oh, I mean, I would have to say Shoretel. I mean, Shoretel was, when you look at a lot of people in the industry today, whether it's through CCaaS companies or UCaaS companies, a lot of these folks actually had their origins at Shoretel. And so it's like this family that grew up and expanded and then have kind of taken all these leadership roles of these different companies. But it was, the David and Goliath story. It was the building something new and unique. And I mean, we took it when I joined the company, I think we were like $11 million in revenue. And then we took that thing public, right? It was a fun ride. It was a lot of great people. It was a great joy.
Now Shoretel was kind of a casualty of the prem to cloud transition. And then you went to Serenova. I'm going to say, and you were actually CEO at the end of there at Serenova. I'm going to say Serenova is probably the saddest. I mean, it seemed like they had a lot of potential. What's your would you agree with me that was of these companies we're talking about? Was that the saddest one?
Yeah, definitely the saddest. I think I joined originally, it was live ops, and the original project I was working on back at Shoretel was we needed to acquire a cloud application. And, I was pitching CCaaS and other people were pitching UCaaS. And I said, I think UCaaS is going to get commoditized and the future is really sticky applications like CCaaS, which kind of led me to find LiveOps at the time, along with a number of other companies. And I joined there and eventually, yeah, the board asked me to take over as CEO. We split the company into two. Private equity took over, and it was like the stars were aligned for great success. And there were like these points of, hey, we need to make this acquisition. We need to make this decision on people. We had started landing some really great partnerships, and candidly, we had an offer on the table to be bought for a significant premium. And that was as the company was kind of picking up steam as being a full CCaaS company, including my predecessor John Lynch. He took over after me. Yeah, some great things, but just some bad decisions by the private equity company to no, we're going to stay the course, and took it from everybody being able to win and that technology being able to live on to being fire sold to House and the box company, and so now it sits over there.
Private equity does not have a good track record in our industry. I think they do fine financially, but I don't think they have a good track record in terms of growing companies at all. Now, a little bit more about you personally and your background. You live in the Austin area. Is it fair to stereotype you as a Texan with a big truck, big barbecue, and a Longhorns fan?
That would be a fair assessment. Yes.
All right. I also understand you are quite the family man. I saw you recently shared on social that your son Nico is over at KeyBank now. Sound like a proud dad post on that one. It's got to be a tough time for people to be starting their careers. I mean, it's just a tough time.
Yeah, I think that for kids starting their careers now, it's a combination of like where I go. There's obviously some economic uncertainty. AI is everywhere, and so it's like, how is that going to affect one person's job or another? And candidly, like unemployment is creeping up, and so it's where's the right bet to be made going forward, and then also like affordability of things just stinks, right? So these kids coming out, I mean, they can make some decent salaries, but the idea of like, when can I buy a house or anything like that is kind of far-fetched, right?
I don't think it's sustainable the way we're going for the younger generation. Back to barbecue for a moment. I'm a big barbecue person. I had all my grills in Colorado. I've been kind of reassembling or recollecting grills and smokers in Europe. I actually bought an egg that's very similar to my Kamado Joe egg, but it's made in Latvia. But it's a good egg. I'm okay with it. But I didn't quite appreciate how hard it was going to be to get good beef in Portugal. And so when I'm in the U.S. like I am this week, I've just been eating beef, so much beef. But the best beef in Portugal seems to come from South America, and by the time it gets there, it's dry aged, and it seems crazy to put this expensive dry aged beef on a smoker, but you got to do what you got to do. I'm sure you'd be doing the same thing. Now we got the Texas roots. Now I don't know if you were born and raised in America. Vasili is not an American name. You probably know that. I always thought it was a Russian name. I've told you before. I always think of One Ping Vasili from Red October. But I also learned it's a Greek name, and I understand that's closer to home. Is that did you live in Greece?
No, so I'm a second generation American. My grandparents all came over either during World War I or World War II. My birth name is Vasilios Trandafilakos, but my grandfather, when he came over, shortened his name. So the Greek version is either Vasilis or Vasilios. And my grandfather wanted to try to sound not Greek, because back then, Greeks were like the lower class of immigrants. If you weren't Irish or Italian, you kind of didn't fit in on the East Coast. And so he shortened it to Vasili. And so that's what I've gone by. But it's all Eastern Orthodox has the same kind of origins for names. So when you go through Greece, Ukraine, Russia, all the Eastern Bloc countries, Eastern Orthodox names all the kids after saints. So I'm named after Saint Basil, and so Vasili in Russian with the Y, or in Greek with the IS or the IOS. But by the way, there's another Vasili. So there's the 84 Olympics bodybuilding champion or sorry, strong weightlifting champion. He was Russian, Vasili. And then there was the sniper in Enemy at the Gates, and that was Vasili as well. So those
Wow.
all Russians, by the way. There are no Greeks.
Yeah, and even the one in Red October, the Russian Red October, he doesn't have the credentials as the ones you described, but he was working for Sean Connery, so I'll take that too.
Yeah.
So not a bad setup. All right, let's get into some CCaaS stuff here. So my first question about CCaaS is, does UCaaS matter? You've worked at a couple of UCaaS companies, and the UCaaS camp generally loves to talk about CCaaS, one of their favorite topics. The CCaaS companies don't really have a lot of time or patience or interest in talking about UCaaS. So you're currently not offering UCaaS. What is your, I guess actually Google kind of has a UCaaS. So maybe Google, I don't know. You tell me. That question is, do these go together or are they totally separate?
I think they're separate. The challenge is that UCaaS, calling platform has been commoditized, right? One UCaaS platform to another really comes down to the customer service. The features everybody tries to talk about don't really matter. It used to be, if you kind of go back, like the Shoretel, Cisco, Mitel days, the types of phones mattered. Like I used to remember going into customers and say, look at our phone. Our speaker phone is stereo and full duplex and all these things. And no one cares anymore. The phones are all Polycom or Huawei or whatever, Yealink. They're all the same phones. And so behind it, it's just a routing platform for calls. But we've become such a mobile society as well. It's almost more important, your mobile phones and your connection to business and how you can kind of bring more of your presence out, whether that's Teams or Slack or Google Workspace, whatever it may be. The challenge with UCaaS is there's just not a ton of value for a customer there. Now, the UCaaS guys love CCaaS because CCaaS is very sticky and it's differentiated and it gets into kind of more of the DNA of a company and kind of the lifeblood.
But it's higher ARR.
Higher ARR, ARPU, the whole thing. But the flip side is just integrate to it via SIP. People like this contact center folks are so used to now soft phones, WebRTC at the desktop. You don't really need a hard phone anymore, but maybe you need hard phones in conference rooms or at the desk. So it's like, do a SIP integration. 98% of customers are fine with that. SMB is maybe where it matters from a bundling perspective. But if you then kind of bridge that chasm and say, look at the financial markets, like the challenge is the financial markets don't care anything about UCaaS. And they kind of punish the Rings and the 8s and others on valuation. Like there's great revenue there, but they're not getting the valuation like you would in any other kind of sticky application. So we'll never build UCaaS. We'll integrate to others for that. And then I think there's definitely a partnership that's there where there's some UCaaS folks that don't have contact center. And I think that, could be something that we can deal with there.
So you've been in contact center for most of your career, and I know you're passionate about it, but you and the industry in general are failures because customer service sucks. And I know this, I've heard you kind of touch on this in the past. How do we resolve this discrepancy between what the contact center suite can do and what is being done with it? Because, you must run into this all the time. You tell people you're the CEO of a contact center company, oh, I got to have a word with you. You must get that. I get that. And I'm just an analyst. And so how do we narrow that gap?
The challenge, I'll talk about how I think we can narrow the gap. The ultimate challenge is, in order to really transform customer experience, there's some technologies that can do some different things, but that means that the decision makers on the customer side have to actually do something different than what they're doing today. And what's actually happening today more than not is just rinse and repeat. It's like, hey, I have an on-prem X platform. let's move it to cloud X platform. And the common theme all the time is replicate my flows, here are my agent groups and here are my skills. And it's like same thing, different day. And if you try to challenge the buyers on different ways to do things, one, most people are risk adverse. They don't want to challenge the status quo. They don't want to do anything that might cause a problem with their existing contact center or customer, touch points. And so they just keep doing the same thing and just keep refreshing the technology. And so what are we left with as end users? We're left with the same experiences. Or a big thing happening nowadays is lots of marketing messages about this panacea of technologies, whether it's virtual agents or other things, that all of a sudden can make our experiences better because one, business users aren't making the decisions. Two, the agents are the problem. Like everything is the agents are the problem. And so let's stick all this stuff in front. That's not delivering better experiences. Actually, crazy frustrating. The airline I fly all the time, they've tried to stick things in front of there and test out experiments. And I'm telling you, it's like drives you up a wall. You're like, can I just talk to somebody who can help me with my problem? And so we're stuck in this world of same experiences for like 20 years, right? The things we're doing with automation today are the same things we were doing in 2001 with nuance stuck in front, maybe a little bit easier to program and maybe a little bit cheaper, but same things. What do we do to change it? I think that there have to be some innovative brands, and I don't mean on the contact center side, brands creating products, whatever those products may be, that say, I'm going to engage my customers differently because I want a competitive edge over competitor 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to show people that there's an easier way to do things. I thought that was starting to happen a little bit with like the Zappos and other folks, but the majority of brands just keep pushing it off. And, they'll stick things like security in front of it or compliance in front of it, or, we have too many contacts to kind of make those decisions. But the number one challenge is actually change management. And there's so many different things that we can do nowadays, and someone has to adopt it. And when you're in a sale process, Dave, to watch people read the room and realize like, oh, buyer Dave is not biting on the transformation. Let's just say we can do what they did before, and then that's what they'll buy. And that's, if you look at the majority of CCaaS bought today, the companies that they're buying from are the same legacy flows and same legacy features.
You touched on so much on that one, so I got to go back and rewind a few of these things. First off, you didn't mention your airline, but I did read just before this call that Delta is expanding their flights to Porto, so you might want to make a note of that since you've just opened an office in Porto. So much of what you're talking about, so much of this transformation that people are excited about today is cost savings. It's not customer service. It's not customer experience. It's not improving the customer experience. It is reducing the cost. And do you think that is the norm? And we're just going to end up with crappy service that is efficient and cheap, and you're capable of delivering it because you've got AI and you've got a bunch of tools to enable autonomous. And if that's what your customers want, that's what the customers are going to get. But do you see transition, like you talked about Zappos there for a little disappointment, but transition more toward customer experience and raising the bar toward a better experience?
I think once some newer applications come out, I'll talk about it in generalities, but when some newer applications come out that can deliver CX transformation, and one of the side benefits is a reduction in costs, what I think is going to be the natural byproduct is we're going to see customer experience get elevated. Right now, the challenge is that the technologies that are being delivered to customers, the justification for the technology isn't higher CSAT. It isn't that you're improving LTV. It's that you buy this from us and I'm going to deliver you an ROI. So obviously the biggest thing people are selling today is virtual agents. The only way to justify virtual agents, because it's not cheap, is you're going to let people go, right? You're going to replace live agents. And so the justification is on reducing costs, and that people have found like, oh, I can reduce costs and automate. That makes sense. Why don't I do that? And that's what's caught on. So now we're in this wave. And I mean, look, you've been in this space a long time like me. We've seen these waves of cost reductions taking hold as a primary benefit. Like they go through these ebbs and flows, and we're back to one of those ebbs of cost reductions, this time through bodies. And also that this message, which is false, by the way, but the message is that the agents are the problem. And that's what the finance, the VC backers have caught on to, is that the agents are the problem. They're seeing people like, oh, these guys have caught on to a bunch of revenue because companies are paying them to supposedly remove bodies, and it's going to save costs. And there's just a little bit of a wave of that. Now, I think it's going to quickly reverberate. I don't think that wave is going to stick too long because brands are already starting to see that cost reduction. Number one, the cost reduction isn't fully happening, but we know we need to reduce costs. Yeah. But there are other places that can have costs reduced if we start to remove some of the complexity that's been brought into the contact center over the last 15, 20 years.
I'm just a innocent analyst here. I'm completely a victim of this, but sometimes vendors lie, and I know that you feel that is true, but you probably won't say that is true because you're part of that group. But I'm going to give you an opportunity here to share with us what lies you hear, not necessarily from who or what, but what kinds of lies. Is it uptime? Is it scalability that make you cringe when you hear your peers or colleagues in the industry talking about CCaaS?
Well, that's a big can of worms you're opening there. Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of stories that are told. Most of these are crafted around marketing messages to keep, folks interested in them. But I think the first one, I mean, look, I've always said for a long time, uptime and reliability is the Achilles heel of our space. No one wants to talk about it. Everybody creates false statistics they have their own formulas for what uptime really means to them. I mean, that's like at this point, that's the base level one, right? As we're moving forward, scale, like I can handle so much scale and be a multi-tenant application. That's not true anymore. Everybody's stitching together, pods and images to kind of help them get scale. But the bigger thing is telling customers that they're going to get all these savings from deploy my XYZ application. I'll just call it XYZ for right now. And you're going to get these savings. And I've told my teams, I said, listen, be careful what you say to customers, because if in 2 years that executive goes back and says, okay, we pitched this ROI as the justification to buy this product, then they get into it and realize the ROI didn't happen. Now, the problem in the contact center space is everybody knows it's pretty sticky. So in 2 years, when you realize ROI didn't happen, are you really going to pull it out and go back and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, you told me you were going to deliver me $4.5 million of benefit in 2 years, and you realize it didn't happen? Are you replacing that vendor? Or is some other executive looking at you saying, you gave me a pitch internally, like your internal executives, right? Saying, you gave me a pitch on this ROI and it didn't pan out. So like, I'm not going to really buy off on your future. Or you take, you're getting a loss of credibility, within there. Other things like the vendor rip and replace right now of creating lies through basically saying, I'm going to give you a discount and this is going to be cheaper. And then there's the gotchas, the kind of add-ons after the fact. So remember, like in the early cell phone days, everybody would say it's $25 a month, all you can get. And then you get your cell phone bill and it's like 105. And you're like, what? It's like tax fee, tax messages, data throughput, all this stuff. And you're always like floored after the fact. That is happening so much in our space right now. The complexity of the bills coming through and this idea, product XYZ Connect, says, hey, price per minute, usage, it's going to be cheaper. And then customers get into it and get a bill at the end of the month and say, what are all these other fees? Oh, well, those are the base fees. And then here's all your other fees. And customers get stuck, right? They get stuck with these add-on costs and vendor lock-in after the fact.
No surprises there. Good response. Tough question. The one that I thought you would jump on, which you didn't, is scalability. I thought you would go all over scalability.
Well, I think scale is well, I mean, I kind of said scalability. I didn't jump on it because I will say that while being able to scale within a given image for a customer is important, I've seen the vendors be able to spin around this and give a lot of different hocus pocus to the customers. And in the end, for some reason, the customers kind of buy off on it for a variety of different reasons. But it hasn't resonated as much as I thought it would. So, I mean, most people can't scale beyond, I'm just going to call it 2,000 to 3,000 users in a given image. And then you have to start hooking these things together and creating like bigger images. And so many customers have anywhere between like 3 and 6 images in order to get them scaled, let alone, let's not talk about multi-region or resiliency. You know, most people can't do multi-region failover. And separate to that, if you're a global company, you have to start setting up images, you know, per region globally, and then figure out how to tie them back together. There's kind of no difference in that architecture and back in the on-prem days.
We started off, we talked about a couple of companies or a few companies you've worked at in the past. I believe you've got a kind of a core group that kind of sticks together. You guys travel as a pack sometimes. Is there anybody you want to mention that kind of fits into that criteria?
Look, I think when you find great people, not just great people like in personalities and kind of having that interpersonal connection, but also just execution and trust. Like for me, trust is like a foundational element to executing well. Then you keep those people close to the vest. Now, I mean, you don't intentionally try to like just drag them along all the time, but you naturally kind of find your way together. And so, yes, like Baker Johnson and Leslie Blank are folks that have, you know, come with me. John Lynch originally came with me. Great, you know, great executive, loved working with him. But also, I will say I've gotten lucky, and I'm going to say lucky. It's definitely not anything smart on my part, but I have met some phenomenal executives in recruiting people to come to UJET. Like Kristen King has been absolute just rock star. Dan Hannon, as well as we just brought a new CTO about 6 months ago, Ian Peters Campbell. And yeah, I've just been blessed with meeting great people. So yeah, it's been fun.
All right. UJET's a tough company. You guys started taking off before we knew you, so we didn't already have a brand. You know, some companies go back with a long brand. And then you got this relationship with Google, which is, we're going to talk a lot about a little bit later, but we got this Google relationship. So I was trying to think of who your primary competitors are. And I can't decide. I don't know. I'm asking you. I don't know if they're more of the traditional CCaaS players, or is it more like Amazon because of your relationship with Google? I mean, and so who are the vendors that you see the most that you're in the field?
Yeah, so I can actually even bifurcate that, because when we go to market with Google in that relationship, typically who we see as competitors is Amazon and Genesys. Those would be probably, and more so Genesys just because of the legacy on-prem base and obviously the frustrations they've caused in their customer base, forcing them to upgrade. And so there's a lot of enterprise customers looking to make different decisions. On the UJET side of things, we'll see the traditionals, right? NICE, Five9, Genesys. I would say that's, pretty common who we see there.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So how do you describe UJET when you meet people or prospects that don't really know UJET? A lot of the CCaaS companies are saying the same things. And I find as an analyst, it takes me a good 10, 15 minutes to find out what's different here in this, peel away a few layers. You don't have that many minutes necessarily in the class. I'm not looking for the elevator pitch, but something like that. What are the things that make you, that stand out as what makes UJET different?
Yeah, so I think there's two ways I'll go about this. First is how we are today, but where tomorrow, like the messaging shifts, or I shouldn't say tomorrow, but as of a couple of weeks ago, our messaging kind of shifts. to being an AI application company for CX transformation, improving customer experience, driving lifetime value and customer sat. And the reason for that is a large pivot that we're making with the company. Traditionally, we've been the most modern, scalable, and reliable CCaaS application on the market that has unique applications that basically enhance the collaboration between customers and agents at a brand. Because we have things like sharing photos and videos and biometric authentication and in-app capabilities that just don't exist everywhere else. However, the CCaaS plumbing and the routing have started to become somewhat table stakes, and the shift to being the AI applications company that can reside not only on top of other contact centers, but also can be more efficient through the use of an entire UJET stack is where we're shifting to. And so you might have seen about a week ago, we announced the launch of our conversational analytics product through a small acquisition of Spiral. That is kind of step 2 in where we're going around the AI application. So we have a UJET virtual agent that can sit over the top of any contact center. We now have our conversational analytics that can sit on top of any contact center, including UJET, obviously. And then come next year, we're going to launch another product, which is aimed at really the full problem that exists in customer experience. And it's the blind spot that no one's paying attention to. And that's where we're going to really kind of come out with, we've solved the problem, and everybody thinks the problem is over here, but the problem is really in the middle, and we're going to save real dollars, but driving other, improvements in CSAT and lifetime value and true ROI. Right?
Now you touched on Spiral there, which, by the way, 2 months into your CEO role, you did an acquisition. I think that pretty quick action there. But Spiral's in this stack. We haven't got to this stack yet. We're still in this stack over here.
Okay.
So this stack over here, which is the last card, your definition or your view of UJET has changed over the years, and I want to highlight some of that, because when I first met UJET, it was really the smartphone first story. And it's actually changed a few times just in that story. And then I think the Google relationship, that was what, 2012? No, 22?
2022 is when it went public, yeah.
Yeah, so there's been, companies evolve. I'm not saying this is a negative thing. Companies evolve. But I want to kind of go back to, the smartphone story. Did the smartphone story disappear because it wasn't important, or because others caught up, or what? Tell me about this. And what was the smartphone story?
So the smartphone story. So Anand Janafalkar, who founded the company, he didn't come from the contact center space. So when he was looking at the contact center problem, he's like, the problem is that brands don't know where their customers are coming from. They don't have any touch points that really integrate anything proactive. And then there's no collaboration between me being a customer and the brand. Yet, if you look on all the sales and marketing use cases, there's all these technologies. You go to a website, you Google search something. Next thing you know, you're on social media. You got ads following you. They know who you are, where you're at, what your preferences are, the last 3 things you bought. When it comes to customer service, no one cares. Like it just stinks. So you call in and everybody starts with, okay, tell me your name and your problem, and you introduce yourself to the brand, even if you've bought things 20 times. So Anand, coming from the mobile space, said, everybody's becoming more mobile. Everybody's on a smartphone. Why don't we have an SDK that embeds itself into companies' apps, like a Home Depot or a banking app or whatever it may be? And so when they're there and they want to contact customer service, there's a way to already know who they are. You know their geolocation. You can now collaborate with them. And the concept was absolutely brilliant, to be frank. And if you think about it, it's almost like being ahead of its time for the functionality. What's interesting is
it completely was. There were very few companies that had SDKs for smartphones. You were way ahead of the time. And so I'm just curious. Yeah, go ahead.
It still exists, and we actually are enhancing more capabilities. We actually have AI capabilities now in what we call essentially the smart actions within the SDK to do pre-session, collaboration while people might be waiting in queue, or they're calling in or chatting in, whatever it may be. But the kicker was when I came into the company in 2020, Anon said to me, we do so many amazing things, but something's not catching. And so I looked at the website, I saw a demo. I had a friend that was running a large technology reseller out of Dallas. I said, hey, do me a favor. Let's just sit on a demo together. I want to kind of get your thoughts. And after watching the demo and all the whiz bang stuff, he said, do you have a contact center? I see the mobile thing, but is there a contact center? And I realized like the light bulb went off that the core application that was doing everything was the contact center, and the mobile pieces were like a feature or a bridge off of the contact center. But we had gone so hard at the messaging around mobile that we were getting confused. Like we would go present to some customers and they would say, oh my God, that's so cool. That's going to be phase 2 for us. Right now, I just need to replace the contact center. Oh, and I was like, okay, we need to change the messaging a bit. We're a contact center with these mobile applications, not we're this mobile customer experience, kind of panacea. And so essentially that's what we've done. And we shifted to the core CCaaS message. And then of course, we landed obviously the Google relationship. So there's obviously.
Okay, so now you're skipping ahead now because after the mobile phone, the next big one, I remember I interviewed you at Enterprise Connect when you did the multi-cloud story. And I think it's the multi-cloud story turned into the intercloud story. And then it just kind of disappeared. And I still tell people that you have this active capability. And everybody says, there's no way, Dave. There's no way. You're full of crap. And it's like, well, I think that's what he said. So yeah. What's going on? What happened to that story?
Yeah, so 100% we have active. Other people might say no because they're not doing it, right? We built CX Intercloud, which was the ability. So think about today we have multi-region, we'll call it. CX Intercloud is the same thing as multi-region, but spread across infrastructure as a service provider. So Amazon to GCP, or we even architected an Amazon to Azure kind of one. And what we found was, as we were talking with, by the way, the technology still exists. It's just that companies, maybe not now, maybe like as of a month ago, people want to change that story after Amazon had the big outage in East. Companies were kind of like, I want everything in one cloud, and I just want it spread across multi-regions, because even though people will talk about that they have a little bit of a multi-cloud story from a user perspective, they're really embedded in either Amazon or Azure or GCP. They're not really splitting their mission critical applications between cloud providers. And so we still have it, but it wasn't being deployed by customers. So what we deploy nowadays is multi-region, which is taking the same technology and basically running it between multiple different geo regions within GCP or whatever that may be.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So I imagine too that with the Google partnership, that they weren't as excited about selling Azure or AWS as a failover. So, but the intercloud, or I guess it could be kind of an intra-cloud and be active across multiple regions, is still a capability, is what you're saying. You can still.
So what we do in the multi-region is it runs essentially active and active with the sync service in between. So you have the ability to fail between one or another, or you could load balance if you want to. What we see in most enterprises is that there's they do it kind of like in a primary and a secondary, but yeah, it can be automatic or manual, whichever they want. By the way, architecture, like we typically kill it when we talk to people about architecture. It's funny because when you get into these large enterprises, they talk about security, scale, architecture, redundancy, resiliency, and we crush it there. When they get to other brands, they start to sacrifice on the architecture and the scale in order to get, funny enough, legacy features. Like it's like, well, I need that feature from my Avaya from 1998 or from my Genesis from 2001, and they get stuck on those legacy features.
We got to talk about Google, obviously. And so Google was, you just did your second fundraising, Series B. Both of them, A and B, had Google Ventures in it.
One we just did was a D.
Oh, that makes more sense. Okay, I had that down as a B. Okay, that makes more sense. So Google's been there for a while. You're up to D now. So Google's been in there for 3 or 4 of them. And so the obvious question that a lot of people have, and I know you can't answer it directly, but you must have a answer to it, is why hasn't Google just acquired you?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked that question a lot. Customers bring it up. I mean, ultimately, I don't work at Google, and so I don't know the answer, directly from, what the strategy is. I think that from what I see on the market, right? So what I can do is I can talk about it at a large level, and it probably somehow relates to Google. I think everybody is so enthralled by AI application, like virtual agent, agent assist. I mean, it's OpenAI versus Gemini versus, everything, DeepSeek and so on and so forth, that everybody thinks that AI may take over the world. And look, you and I come from the contact center space and understand like how the world kind of overall works with contact center and the value applications that come on top of it. But there is a group of folks that think that there might be a future where it's AI only. There are no agents, there are no routing applications. And our relationship with Google is super strong and it's super productive. But I would guess that there's part of it that's like playing out like, is AI going to become everything? Like, or
Right.
is it that important? What we're already seeing is, it is that important. There is a direct correlation between CCaaS and AI growth versus AI only, right? And so I think the CCaaS vendors see that stuff too. I think even the CRM vendors are seeing that. That's why the CRM vendors are trying to figure out what's their play here and how they get in. So the sticky tie to all these applications is the CCaaS plumbing.
So apparently with Series D, as in David, that was not too many months ago. That was recent. $76 million fundraising. Does that sound right?
Yep.
$500 million valuation. Congratulations. That's pretty nice. And it wasn't just Google Ventures. You had a bunch of other investors in there, including Kleiner Perkins. So you've got some smart people looking at your numbers saying, hey, there's something here. So congratulations and all of that. Now, when that Google partnership, go-to-market partnership, you said 2022, happened, UJET, which was growing and blossoming and doing its thing, kind of started to shrivel up because it kind of became a part within Google. And correct me if I have this wrong, kind of became a part within Google. And I know a lot of you at UJET had dual business cards that had a Google email address on them, and you were part of the Google team. And then more recently, it seems to be kind of blossoming again, separate. So I wanted to get your take on what's going on with that. And I want to share one other observation as context. Back to Serenova, Enterprise Connect, Sunday nights. That was a Serenova thing. The analysts would get there Sunday night, the day before the event started, and we would meet with Serenova, and you'd give us all this information. It became a UJET thing. You guys adopted that, and then it became lately a Google thing. And the last Google one, they were talking a lot about AI. And when I kept asking about certain CCaaS questions, they were very, I don't know what you're talking about. We know about AI. We work with everybody. And so I suspect there's a little bit of a connection between that observation and this new blossoming story that I'm talking about, where UJET seems to be coming back as a company, but still strong within Google. So quite a setup there. Is there? Explain all that.
Yeah, look, a lot of interconnected points there. So if you rewind back, as the Google relationship had kicked off, we were predominantly selling UJET to the market, but Google was also trying to figure out how to sell kind of these turnkey enterprise applications, like going from selling kind of bits and bytes that are typically partnered with other people with, a lot of professional services through these integration partners, to selling more of a turnkey application that really is at the core of kind of business process and things that affect was a new venture. And so there was a decision made by our leadership at that point to pivot and help a lot more with the go-to-market. And so the byproduct of that was a lot of our sales team's efforts ended up, working more in conjunction with the Google sales teams in getting that go-to-market off the ground. Now, at the same time, we also started to see that there was really two markets. There was the enterprise market, and then there was, I'm going to say SMB, but I'm really breaking the norms of SMB. So when I say SMB, I'm going to call it up to about 1,500 agents. And I say enterprise, 1,500 and above. And so Google really, really strong in the enterprise space, lots of relationships, existing customer contracts, of course, brand recognition. But we were also trying to figure out like how we don't have channel conflict, because we did have some customers where, our sales teams were in as UJET, and then of course Google came in, and then the customer said, well, what's the difference? And it really is the same product. And one's just under the Google umbrella, as well as managed and deployed and supported by Google. And one is UJET, and it's more deployed in a multi-tenant model as well. But we were trying to figure that out. And I would say we probably didn't do the best job in trying to bifurcate, because we leaned very heavily on helping Google drive that go-to-market motion. And that actually started to, it did really well going into the end of 23 and through the beginnings of 2024. As the conversation between me and the board started happening around, where they want me coming in and taking over from Anon, because Anon wanted to kind of go on and work on his next venture. I said, hey, we're missing the mid-market. Like, we really got to bring that back. And my frank opinion was, I just felt like the mid-market moves faster than the hyperscalers can move. And so that's what we really did, is restarted that whole motion, started putting all the marketing dollars back into there. We actually have bifurcated sales teams. So there's a sales team that works with all the Google stuff, and then there's a sales team that works on all the UJET. We have an artificial line drawn to kind of eliminate any channel conflict. And so far it's working well. Like, we've found a little bit of a sweet spot in there around where there's not a lot of overlap. And if there is overlap, we deal with it like super quickly. But that's kind of where we've landed.
So in terms of seats, I assume the Google branded version of UJET is probably bigger than the UJET version of UJET, and possibly in terms of accounts, the other way around.
Yeah, I would say the other way around in accounts, seats wise. Google's landing a lot of the whales. And I think, by the way, I missed answering your other question around the analyst stuff. Look, you'll see us a lot more in front of the analysts going forward, not because of any challenge with the Google relationship. Actually, I think the Google relationship is going really well. But per your other question, I do think that Google sees AI as not just pivotal, but almost, does it need contact? Like, where does contact center end up in the future? And so there's a lot of kind of testing that hypothesis around virtual agents and conversational AI. And by the way, you see Sierra out there saying the same stuff, Decagon out there saying the same stuff, OpenAI. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect of reality around what the future looks like, but all that technology plays together.
Well, Google, the way I wasn't really complaining about the analyst. I was just like a normal transition. It had gone from Serenova to UJET to Google, so that was fine. But what surprised me was Google was treating CCaaS. They were the first CCaaS provider that was CCaaS agnostic. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. CCaaS providers aren't supposed to be agnostic. They're supposed to sell their own thing. And they were trying to be CCaaS agnostic. It turns out they were probably just a little bit ahead of their time, because TalkDesk is now doing that. They call it CX automation, CXA. NICE is kind of set up Cognigy that way to sell into any CCaaS. So it seems like the CCaaS agnostic thing is maybe not that far off, and so and you're kind of doing it too, which is double mind blown, because your most recent acquisition, Spiral, is also selling into other CCaaS solutions, and so.
Well, you could take NICE. I have a lot of respect for them as a company. They don't come over the top to stay over the top. They come over the top to take over the account, whether it's WFM or anything, right? They want to own the full stack. But I think that when you look at a company's buying cycle right now, the most common thing happening is I want to transform my business, and I've been given a directive through executive management to have an AI strategy. What's the easiest way into an AI strategy? It's virtual agents, and virtual agents can really come over the top and plug into anything. And that can also be kind of your Trojan horse to eventually own the contact center and the routing layer once everybody realizes, hey, we need to make further improvements. Google was, I think, the first to really drive that strategy. And now others are catching on. But it also is an easy phase-in approach for companies that are looking to kind of do something broader around CX transformation. Our strategy going forward, though, is really the full CX transformation. The conversational analytics is a piece that actually helps customers understand where the problems rely. And it's part of a broader vision of what we call CXOS, where we're going to be building out these pillars around the further transformation of customer experience that relies on these applications. Some of it's from the historical data that says not only are why things are happening, but where is the breakdown in the flows and the process? Because if you can find a way to tell a customer that not only do you need to transform, but we actually found where in your flows is breaking down. Like, we can tell you where it is, and then we can run this kind of transformation and configure kind of your next generation call center. Then we actually help bring real efficiencies and cost savings to light. And so that's essentially where we're going. I mean, our passion and my passion is really around changing customer experience for you and me. And so, like, what's kind of the panacea for me is when I get the brands that I deal with to eventually deploy our technologies to change my own experience. To me, that's like I've reached the end of the rainbow, right? At that point, I've hit my goal. But when I continue to see everybody using the same things, doing the same thing different day, I'm like, okay, great, right? The most common thing I hear about companies choosing, I'm just going to call it XYZ brand, is, hey, we got into this, consumption only model. It sounded really good, but we just got a cloud version of what we already had. And that doesn't sound super exciting, right? It actually sounds kind of boring.
Spiral's a big move. Congratulations on it. It's a pretty big and surprising move. And it's not limited to UJET sales. And so I guess the first question is, will Google sell it? And the second question is, are you going to be selling it actively? Is your direct sales and channel sales going to be selling it directly into non-UJET accounts?
100%. We're already doing it. Since the announcement, we've already had a flood of interest from folks around wanting to take this application and run it on top of both, not either their UJET stack or their, I'll just call it legacy or competitive contact center product. So
now they have a free trial. Is that going to stay around?
The free trial, we'll have three things that'll stay around: free trial, freemium, and then the paid version, right? So the freemium, we're going to leave out there because it's like, hey, we're not going to go sell you something just because we want to sell it to you. Like, we want you to find value. So we'll give you limited use of it. And if you want to extend the use, then you pay. It's kind of like getting your free Gmail account. And once you hit a certain storage limit, then you have to start paying. Kind of a similar concept, but we want people to use it so they see the transformative capabilities versus going and paying some big amount of money, putting it in, and then getting frustrated that it is or isn't delivering value.
I just want to clarify for those watching, it's Spiral is conversational analytics, not conversational AI like say a Cognigy, but more like a Qualtrics or more of a voice of the customer type of tool. So you've got a freemium model on that. And the next you didn't answer, is Google going to sell it?
I think at some point Google will sell it. I mean, day one, it happened very fast. We got it out to market pretty fast. So we didn't enable that channel right out of the gate, but there's already been discussions going on about how we will enable that. So,
and will Google someday Google might sell it? Is that the day that you converted off of AWS?
Yeah. I mean, look, we are cloud agnostic. I'll be candid with you. We're cloud agnostic. I mean, we originally built UJET on AWS and ported to GCP. it's hard as a technology leader to build a technology on a platform that's also a competitor to you. So to say I want to give Amazon money when Amazon is out there actively trying to, take accounts with some of those same philosophies we were talking about before, I do business with people, do business with me. And that's how I approach partnerships and everything else.
So fair enough. So now I want to go back to something else you said earlier. We were talking about you're building up UJET again. You say for the mid-market direct opportunity. So contradiction here. You're in trouble. I caught you in a web of lies. You're building up. You've been hiring. You've been doing a lot of stuff to make UJET a standalone brand. Yet you sold off your services to a company called Onyx. Explain that one.
Well, I believe in partners, right? I believe in the reseller channel. A little bit of history here. I got my start in the UC and CC space as a reseller. Like I started a reseller with a buddy of mine, and that's what kind of made my career in this space was starting there. So I believe in the reseller and the channel community. And every brand has their own services division. And I will say our services group was like growing like a weed. And it was contradictory to the partnerships that we were trying to build. So it was, I want to have a partnership with, for example, an organization I respect that's a partner of ours is T-Tech. And it's like, you want to go build this relationship with them. Oh, and by the way, we're doing all these large implementations. It's counterintuitive to the strategy. And at the same time, the market doesn't care about one-time revenue in our space. Everything is about recurring revenue. But to those folks, to the channel partners and the solution integrators, that one-time revenue is important because it's the ongoing relationship with the customer around services and consulting and other pieces. We felt like it would scale better within another partner. And we had been approached. We didn't actually go try to sell it. We had been approached by a number of companies saying, hey, can we take this off of you? And it just blended with the strategy that I wanted to take the company forward with, which is we're going to be super channel friendly, channel partners, SIs, consulting partners, and we're going to be focused on building software, not on building, one-time revenue services. Okay,
so now you're talking about partnerships. Now we have to go back to another announcement. Just was a month ago or 2 months ago, you announced a partnership with Laivly. Now you're in bed with Google, who's known for their AI. Why would you go out and partner with another AI vendor?
Yeah, so Laivly is an interesting company. And candidly, our customers had started procuring that product on their own, not through us. And, there's a lot of things happening within the AI market as it is. So we can try to be prescriptive. We can try to say, we want you to use UJET virtual agents or, UJET agent assist, whatever it may be. But the reality is there's a lot of choices out there. And some of our key customers and key prospects are just naturally choosing other solutions. So we have one of two approaches to take. One is to say, no, we don't integrate with it. And then they'll say, well, fine, I'm going to go. You're banking on, are they going to throw that vendor out or throw you out? And, depending on the time of day, it's a coin toss, right? Or you can say, we believe that a fully integrated single solution from us is the most efficient for a company. But if they want vendor choice, let's open up vendor choice. Let's have the APIs and let's have the integrations, and then we'll see where the market goes, right? There's thousands of virtual agent companies out there right now, especially with all the crazy funding that's going on. Everybody and their mother wants to build a virtual agent. So naturally, we're getting asked by customers like, hey, I just chose, XYZ virtual agent. Can you integrate? And we're like, well, why don't you use ours? And they're like, oh, I already bought it. I already set up a test account. I just want to do this. And so we've taken the approach of having a more open ecosystem, not that we will sell, but that we'll integrate to. And, we're kind of flowing more with our customers on that one. Laivly, not only have we had some of our key customers choose their application, they've been extremely happy with it. I'm not going to say whether it's better or worse than Google. I think each customer is a little bit different, but they're a good company and there's some good match in the DNA. But I mean, Dave, look, we've been in this space for decades. it's always been, you can have your native application, but you have to work within the ecosystem. I mean, case in point with WFM and QM, you can have whatever you want. But if you say, I'm not going to integrate to Verint or NICE, you're going to wipe out half the customers that you want to go bring your other applications into.
Okay. Actually, that question's coming up too. But sticking with partnerships for a moment here, Laivly is a pretty significant, the way you presented that, when the announcement came out in October, I looked it up. Pretty significant partnership, go-to-market partnership. I was trying to think of, do you have any other major go-to-market partnerships? And I know that the investment round that you just did, Series D, as we've established, part of that justification was for new go-to-market expansion. And so I imagine some of that went toward your acquisition of Spiral. Maybe some of that went toward building up Laivly. What other partnerships if any, that we can highlight, either go-to-market or technical?
Yeah, so some of those will get announced in the new year. Like we have a number of partnerships that we'll kind of come to press with, but yeah, there's a whole ecosystem. It's just been a refresh of, we've always had like technology integrations, like we integrate to all the CRM players for the most part, but taking that from an integration that meets the customer's needs into like a go-to-market partnership has not been like the focus, purely just more for, what can we focus on today? And so we've been focusing on that, and Baker's been leading my alliances group along with Michelle, Shane, and that's been a huge focus for us. And we're executing on all those. So Laivly was one, but there's a series of others between CRM players, UCaaS players that you'll see coming out in the new year. Definitely more around the broader ecosystem of data and CRM, little bit on the UCaaS side, a little bit less on AI partnerships per se. Like we definitely have a very strong relationship with Google, and Gemini is the foundation of a lot of the technologies that we're building and doing going forward. But that's where the focus will be there.
All right. So looking in the future, when we look back, the way you described earlier, the Shoretel CEOs, or I mentioned the Rowan era of Cisco, UJET's had one CEO until recently. It's had its founder and on. You mentioned him several times. It's had one CEO. Now has its second CEO. A few months into the game, we've already seen one major partnership, one major acquisition. When we look back at the different histories of UJET, how are we going to describe the Vasili era?
The Vasili era. I think I hope to say that it would be a transformative era within the company where we see significant growth, but also recognition by the market of the solutions and the technology we've brought to customers. I think that would not only be my goal, but I'd love to get it because customers are saying it, not because I'm trying to, cozy up to Gartner for the Magic Quadrant, right? I hope that it would be because the customers are recognizing us so much that everybody has to talk about it. We will be doing other acquisitions. So, Spiral was the first, but we will be doing others. And the goal really is to complete not the portfolio just as it needs to be today, but there are some areas we see as really like category creators in 2026 that we look to release. And we're definitely focused, and we are changing the face of the company like every day right now.
That's excellent. I already mentioned earlier that you just opened a new office and development center in Portugal, Porto.
Yeah.
Porto seems to be an emerging contact center hub, development hub. Why Porto?
Flipped a coin. No, I'm kidding. No, it was, we were looking for a offshore development space where we could get really good engineering talent, have strong English as kind of second language, and really kind of build up another center. And of course, we looked at all the standard ones you could think of, But when you start looking at some of those places, the costs in those places are skyrocketing and the loyalty is like zero. I won't name the country, but the loyalty has gone to zero. So those engineers there, that's like every 1 to 2 years are just cycling out somewhere else and wanting 10 to 20% raises. And when we looked at Portugal came up, I tried to avoid Portugal, to be honest, and mainly because, you know, TalkDesk had been based there before. Five9s went in to pick up the TalkDesk base. 8x8 went in through the Fuse acquisition, and I felt like it was kind of crowded. But one of the portfolio companies of our investor had just opened a Lisbon engineering office, and so I met their CTO, and he was kind of talking to me about the people and the talent. And he didn't care how many competitors were there. He just loved the environment. And we went through a bunch of different things, right? Not just the caliber, but how they're using AI for coding new software. And we started, okay, let's take a look. And we took a look, and Porto started to give us a significant number of resumes. We found a few folks that just happened to be in that area, and we said, okay, we're going to plant the flag. And like I tell people on my team, get 60% of the information and then make a decision. And I did it on gut feel at that point. And I will tell you, it has been a bang up positive decision. And we simultaneously had tested out a relationship with a local company there that did like some outsourced dev resources, company called Pixel Matters. And it was just amazing experience. And we've tested out outsourced shops before with very lackluster results, and Porto just kind of felt like home when we did it. So
is the Porto office strictly a development center, or is it going to be more of a sales office as well, or what's the plan?
It's turning out to be everything. It originally started to be a product and engineering center, but we've now hired kind of like a general manager who's a little bit over kind of go to market. We have sales engineers there now. So we have some consulting resources out there. So I think that it's going to expand beyond that. But the way we're kind of set up in Europe is Dublin is a lot more of kind of our SDR and CSM resources. UK is primarily a sales and sales engineering hub, and Porto started that way. But what we're seeing is we found kind of a nice balance of people, language, and culture between the three. And so we'll do a little bit of tic-tac-toe around there. So,
okay. I'm going to go back to the Google piece a bit. And I mentioned earlier that a lot of the UJET people have two sets of business cards, and Google brings you into accounts and you pretend you're part of the Google team, and then the next appointment you have is a UJET account, and you switch back, change your shirt real quick. That Google relationship's been very complicated. I imagine it's been a double-edged sword. It's had a ton of great things to bring with it, and it's probably been a bit of a headache at certain times. You mentioned that the relationship's going really well. That's my impression as well from outside. Anything any thoughts on this? It's very unusual. I mean, most big companies either just acquire or compete with you. You've got this really, and you've got this. You are competing with them, kind of. You got a line in the sand about size of accounts, but tell me about this go-to-market, and how did they drive your R&D priorities, or how do they drive your time schedule, or tell me about that relationship.
So look, we have one product. We have basically an integrated product group. So we have a pretty good sized product group on our side. And on the Google side, there's a Google CCaaS product team, but we actually work as one. So we have actually one development roadmap, and it's the same roadmap. And we both give input into it. Some of the stuff is like what we see. Google is very customer driven. So a lot of times, Google will feed in priorities that are based on customer input and around like where, customers would like to see the contact center kind of go. But it's really unified on that front. And I think that the only thing that really kind of comes in reality, obviously Google's a lot bigger than us. And so there's only so many resources we have to build and develop things. And so, we get in a normal kind of discussion, like any business relationship, around what's the right balance of the things that we can put out. But it is a 100% symbiotic relationship around the things we do for them and the things they do for us. And it continues to evolve. I've done OEM relationships in my past, and most of them have not, outside of Cisco, I should say. Cisco, they were very successful, but others, I've done a couple OEMs of Mitel, those were not successful. But this has actually been, pretty successful. And I think 2026, we're going to see a pretty breakout year with Google around contact center. And we're even leaning into helping Google around the mid-market as well. So we will, I'm sure we'll have to, adjust as we go forward and making sure that we're still kind of not having the channel conflict. But I think there's a good understanding of where we both play in that space.
Now, I imagine there's a lot of times you wake up and get out of bed and say, I really wish Google would just acquire us and eliminate this conflict. And I imagine there's a lot of times you get out of bed and say, I'm so glad we're not part of Google. They seem to have attention span problems. They have big layoffs that don't seem to really affect priorities. I mean, aren't driven by priorities or whatnot. I mean, they've got a very short attention span. That's what I can tell from the outside. Are you feeling that mostly that it's great to be independent, or that's kind of a dangerous question, but how do you, like I said, there's no other relationship like this that I know of.
There isn't another relationship on the market like it. What I would say, well, I guess you maybe could say like Ring and Nice potentially. I'm not sure, but I want to make change in this industry. My passion is not about selling a bunch of revenue or selling the company or what my paycheck is at the end of the day. My passion in this space is to actually transform customer experience, to actually break the barrier of replacing the same old stuff all the time and help customers actually make that transformation. I believe we have the technology to do it at UJET. Google, I believe, has the reach and the brand recognition to make that fully a reality. The only reason sometimes I would say it would be better to be more in the mix is to be able to drive that change. Because today I'm not a Googler, right? I'm the CEO of UJET. So I'm an input from the outside. I'm not a driver from the inside. You could kind of say, like when I was at Cisco, that position was the driver of what things could happen, right? Like I made the decision to buy Cloud Cherry, and if we would have kept going in different leadership, we would have been able to transform a lot of things in that space. I think Google has the ability not only to lead the market, like being number one in CCaaS, but more so transform that entire stack. And there is a piece of the application stack, Dave. I'm leading on a little bit. I'm leading on this one, but there's a piece of the application stack that is a multi-billion-dollar space today that does not need to exist in the future. It does not need to exist. It can be eliminated, and companies like Google could drive that transformation at massive scale. I might be able to do it at a small scale, but companies like Google can do it at a massive scale. And that's where I think the market goes.
You just connected some dots for me. You just reminded me that one of your first actions at Cisco was to acquire Cloud Cherry, which was a voice of the customer company. And one of your first actions as CEO at UJET was to go acquire Spiral, which was a voice of the customer. So you're predictable playbook. I got you nailed. Next time you're a CEO, so I know exactly what you're going to do first.
Well, hold on. So then I'm going to ask you a question. What's your prediction of what I'm going to do next?
Oh, that's much harder to do. No, I'm a rear view forecaster. So how much of that, what you're describing there with Google and your vision, how much of the future of UJET and the Vasili Era is going to be defined by Google?
I don't think the transformative area is going to be defined by Google. I believe that Google could define it if they wanted to, meaning like really hit the contact center space. But we're working on multiple things at the same time. And I think that the transformative era of Vasili will be defined by the different partnerships that bring these solutions to bear to the market. And when we start hitting those big brands and actually making a dent in that space that I think should be eliminated while also improving customer experience, that will be the definition of this era.
Okay, very good. All right, now finally we're going to get to the workforce management stuff. You guys made a very quiet and impressive acquisition. I'm going to say 2023 maybe.
Yeah.
And you went out and acquired Authority. I think I was the only one that figured that out and put that in the post. And you guys didn't really want to talk about that. You guys wanted to talk about your own workforce and look what we developed. I always felt it was really important to say that it came from Authority because nobody wants version 1 of anything in software, and Authority had a lot of credibility and capability behind it. So a little bit about why you were so quiet about that, and then how's that gone?
Well, I think the reason why we were quiet about it, and this is a challenge with any acquisition, especially in the contact center space, since everybody builds revenue through like third-party partnerships all the time, is a good chunk of Authority's revenue was through their Five Nines partnership. And so one of the reasons to be quiet was to not rock the boat of that partnership and let those customers continue. So that was the original strategy. I think today, if we were making that same acquisition today, we would take a different approach. We would be louder and kind of stand on the podium a little bit more about that type of move. So yeah, I think overall it was good. How's it gone? It's gone, like I would say it's been a little bit of a wavy process. So initially went really well. Then we kind of, as we were starting to scale some of it, one of the things we need to do is we did a port to GCP. And during that process, I think the technology didn't transition as clean as we wanted it to. And but since then, it's been going a lot better because we put an engineering team of ours on it. We kind of cycled through some of the legacy folks there and really built the whole kind of fresh infrastructure, matching more of kind of our architecture around resiliency and scale. And so that part has gone a lot better. And that is another pillar of our vision there. I don't know if we're going to fully get there, but our vision there is to actually have it work on other contact centers. What I mean by I don't know if we'll fully get there, I don't know if I'm really going to put a bunch of sales efforts around trying to sell WFM as an independent application. I think embedded is good enough for our customers, but there is an idea around it potentially being over the top, especially with what's going on in the market with the WFM vendors.
Well, actually, I'm actually a little surprised to hear you say that because I did my fall conference schedule and I put together a post about themes from the analyst conference schedule in the fall, and I felt very strongly that I've always considered WFM the fries, right? And we're out selling CCaaS burgers, but one of my takeaways from several events is that WFM is becoming a burger on its own and becoming much more important. Cisco launched AQM for the first time. I mean, Cisco's WFM story or lack of story, whatever. So that was a pretty big change out of Cisco. NICE doubled down and said that they really see WFM as a high growth opportunity for them. It was Amazon. Amazon believes that they could make WFM the most popular or the first app that brings customers to Amazon. It's like, really? That's what they said. They said, they said contact. They said connect today is often the first app a customer has, but they believe they want to make it WFM as their first app as the main lure.
Well, are you saying WFM or are you saying QM?
Well, I should say WEM, put it that way,
Yeah.
and so I'll just group it all together. But the point is, it seems to be getting a lot more attention, a lot more focus from a handful of vendors that I met with in the fall. You've got a mature platform. I don't know where you are with that 5.9 base, but it seems like there might be a bigger opportunity there. Am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, no. I want to change the terminology a little bit. So part of the challenge is the analyst community took WFM and QM and bundled it together and called it WEM. And the reality is they're two separate applications. It just happens to be that in the past, NICE bought up a bunch of both companies, Verint bought up a bunch of both companies, and Calabrio did it. And so everybody looks at it as like one application, but they're two separate applications. One is scheduling, adherence, and forecasting, and one is around quality and sentiment and everything. I think there's a huge market for QM. I also believe that,
I'm sorry, huge market for what?
QM, quality management,
QM,
right?
okay.
So if you look at conversational analytics, hint, hint, it essentially is mining the data, both real time and historical, in order to kind of tell you what's going on. And then you can take a bunch of actions from there. The QM space is in for a big transition. And those are places 100%, I think that there's a massive growth opportunity for us and for the market. WFM to me is a little bit more of kind of the stale space. That's your fries, right? Maybe it's your hash brown, I'm not sure, but it's reporting, scheduling, forecasting, same stuff, different day. Made to be overly complex, and it doesn't need to be. But if you advance in that space, like your market is replacing what was already there and trying to replace the legacy vendors. And so the WFM piece is the part where I'm like, integrated WFM, customers want more, one throat to choke, one integrated platform. Going to try to do it as a third-party vendor, do you want to compete against Verint, Calabrio, NICE? Maybe not. That's where my question mark really was more. But
that's a great response. I'm really glad I asked you that question. So let me ask you now, but if you look at the two separately, WFM and QM separately, which is going to get more disrupted by AI?
QM.
And Spiral's part of that.
It is, yes.
If all goes well, QM is the answer to that question. Okay. All right. That's fantastic. AI is changing everything, certainly changing everything in the contact center. As this plays out over the next few years, how much is it really changing? And, we can talk about whether it's self-service or human, but bigger picture, what's really going on here with AI? What's the real story? What are customers really trying to do beyond save a few bucks on a human? What's the end game here, do you think, in the next few years?
Well, I think the ultimate goal is that AI makes things more efficient and faster, and you can really follow the breadcrumbs of your customer more proactively. So this idea of getting predictive and proactive, that you can do it easier and faster because you should be able to integrate all the sources together. Where it's going, data powers everything, and data is going to be more important. We've been talking about this for years, but it will be the epicenter of the decisions that need to get made once we, the vendors bringing the technologies, start making the right decisions about how to utilize that data and not worrying about the ecosystem of who you might offend or your selling partner or something else. The AI as it is right now, and this idea that we're automating a bunch of stuff at the front end, to me is a distraction. It's like the cloud going through the sky when the real weather's coming from behind. The problem is no one's paying attention to where the weather is. There's a few guys out there that are paying attention. You can start to hear them talk. And when you hear me in kind of Q1 start talking about our new product release, there's a few folks aligned with that out there today. But this idea that virtual agents is going to change everything, I don't agree with. And there's a growing contingent of people that are saying you're right. It's not the popular thing to say right now. But Dave, Nuance was doing half these automation things, maybe 3/4 of these automation things back in the 2000s, right? We went through this massive automation phase in the early 2000s, and then we reverberated from full automation, speech rec, access to automate a lot of different things, to getting back to live agent interaction, personalized experience, want to know our customers, and we're reverting back to that automation thing again, and we're just getting into kind of the latest Nuance technology. So I think that what you see today is not going to be the future. But when we learn to leverage the data to interconnect the customer journey and the live agent, then we will start to realize that panacea of experience of the brands knowing who we are and understanding us and being proactive, like being truly proactive or predictive around the decisions. And then we won't talk about FCR anymore. So first contact resolution. We'll talk about ACR, automated contact resolution. And not meaning from a virtual agent, I mean from someone reaching out from an automated campaign or something, like reaching out saying, hey, Dave, I noticed your battery was getting low on your electric car, and we need to bring it in for maintenance. I've already scheduled you based on your calendar availability I've seen in the past. Does that work for you? And you're like, holy smokes, that's amazing,
Yeah. Now, you're CEO, so you've got to manage not only your product and portfolio, but you've also got to manage a company. And so how much is AI disrupting you as a CEO? I mean, your feature velocity, the way you create code, the way you get customer feedback, et cetera.
Huge applicability internal. This is why I feel like we keep missing it with the virtual agent stuff. And the use of AI that we've employed within our company has made me kind of realize this panacea of what needs to happen in customer experience, because we're using AI for coders. All our top developers are using AI for writing code. So throughput is increasing, quality is improving, but then also like just internal functions around creating documents, presentations, analysis of strategies, right? AI is helping build the foundation of that. Now, it's not always right? You can't just write a prompt and it spits out the right information, but it gives you a really solid framework to build off of.
Yeah. And because you're so close to Google, I assume you're running Gemini and everything internally, and you're running the Google Suite, everything. So in some ways, Google's kind of made a decision for you, which in this case may not be a bad decision.
Yeah, look, certain things that we can use Gemini for, right? So we use Gemini for a lot of internal tools. Some of our developers play around with multiple things. So they'll test, kind of Gemini against, ChatGPT or something. But then like our coding tools are different, right? So there's a different set of AI coding tools that developers use that don't follow that same realm, right? It's, there's, Augment Code, Claude Code, Windsurf, so on and so forth. So,
all right, let me wrap this up. Vasili, I can't thank you enough for all the time you've given us. Some really from the heart answers, and it's just been such an engaging conversation. And I wish you so much luck. It's been so fun watching you get grow, and I'm so excited about the future you've got in front of you.
Dave, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I was your first guest, and I enjoyed the conversation. The time went by.
Very good. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Some kind of conversation. Bye.